I want to thank everyone for joining us. Today, we're talking about the 5 steps of client acquisition. Most clients will go through this process in one form or another. So with that said, why don't we look to jump right in? And Amy, I would just ask you at the end of our 25 minutes or so, I'll ask you if there's any questions that come up. And at that point, we will look to answer most, if not all of them.
Sounds fantastic. Thank you all for making the time today to come to the session before we forget to mention as well too. Certainly
Absolutely. So 5 steps of client acquisition. Most of you, if not all of you, have seen something along these lines. There's prospecting, information gathering, case design, closing. With closing comes application taking, hopefully, and then follow up. So what we're going to do over the next 20 or so minutes is go through each one of them. I'm not going to go into extreme granular detail, but again, just to give you more of a review, and possibly you might learn one thing or two. As I say, I have two girls. As I say to them all the time, education never takes a vacation. So if you pick up one thing out of our talk today, then it was worth your time. So let's jump right in. Prospecting. And I'll tell you what, I've had tons of conversations over the last few months with advisors and agents like yourselves about what their biggest challenge has been during this stupid pandemic. And it has been getting in front of enough qualified prospects. So if we can help you with that, I think it's a win-win situation for everyone. So the first thing in regards to prospecting is you really need to identify what your target market is. If you're just, hey, anyone with money is my target market, that's fine, but you'll never be known as an expert in whatever your niche is. So I would ideally take the time, think about what type of client do you want to work with? Do you have any sort of niche? For example, do you speak a language, a second language other than English? That might be a perfect target market. Do you like to work with retirees and pre-retirees? That could be a target market right there. Do you like to work with a certain subset, whether it's dentists, doctors, someone like that? So think about, or women, absolutely. Think about that as a possible target market. And then once you figure that out, then run with it. Type of prospecting. There really are, basically, there's 2 main types of prospecting that advisors can do. There is outgoing prospecting. That's the type we all know. Pick up the phone, outgoing, contact the client themselves. Pick up the phone, email, snail mail, all different types. Outgoing is more, I'm getting in touch with them. You're being proactive in trying to set up that first meeting. Incoming, on the other hand, is a little bit more subtle. Having a website, maybe having a presence on social media, whether it's LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, something like that. Incoming is more, they're coming to you. You're not actively pursuing them, so it's a more of a passive type prospecting. We have a couple of different initiatives that we're launching this month, specifically in regards to that. So I'll be sending out an email in the next day or so to just reiterate those initiatives. I've spoken to a lot of you about them, but this will just bring it up again. And the real key is, in prospecting, think outside the box. You know, everyone can be the best advisor. Everyone can be the best insurance agent. That's what so many of us say when we talk to prospects. What a prospect really wants to find out is who's different. What are you doing different than everyone else out there? And that's what we try to do here at DMI. So that's why I say think outside the box, because that's going to get you more prospects that you're going to sit down with. The next step is information gathering. This starts even before you have your first meeting with the client, at the pre-first appointment. That's when you say, for example, you're talking to the client on the phone, you're getting some basic information. How old are they? Is the prospect married? You know, maybe you'll start to find out what their challenge is. Why are they actually talking to you in the first place? get the basic information before your first appointment. Now, at your first appointment, there's really an art form to the first appointment. That's where you're really looking to find out really why are you sitting down with a client. You should be asking open-ended questions, and then I think it's put pointing there, and then just shut up. Let the client talk. The client should be talking 80% of the time. So many of us out there, we just want to prove how smart we are and just blurt out stuff to the client. This is not the time for it. Ask open-ended questions, be quiet and listen. I love starting with the question, Mr. Client, what are you looking to accomplish? It's such a great open-ended question that can go in so many different directions for the client to answer. So I like to start with that question. And then the key to information gathering is you need to find what the client pain or challenge is. Maybe their worry, their problem. There's a reason why you're there. The goal is to find out what it is. And a lot of times, the first pain or challenge that you find out is not the actual one. So once they start down that path, keep going. Find out what the real pain is, what the real challenge is. Usually the second time that they'll bring it up, or the third time, that's when you'll find out why you're really there sitting down with them. Once you find out what their challenge is, at that point, you're going to probably schedule the next meeting with them, and make sure you give the client homework. Clients love to get homework because it's something that they can actively do while you're out in case design at the next step. So if let's say, for example, you have a client, we'll say a 65-year-old couple. They're looking to retire in 2 years, and they're worried about running out of money. You know what? How about leave them a cash flow analysis form? Basically, they're going to put down what all their expenses are. That would be their homework, as well as, you know what, Mr. Client, Miss Client, can you put together all your statements, whether it's if you have life insurance, 401ks, you have different assets here or there. They should be looking to get that together and either get that information to you before your next meeting or have it together for your next meeting. And then absolutely tee up your next appointment. Mr. and Mrs. Client, we're going to get together a week from today at the same time. Here's what I'm looking to accomplish at the next meeting. Let me ask you this, Mr. and Mrs. Client. What are you looking to accomplish at the next meeting? Again, you'll get an idea of what's really bothering them and why you're there. So that's the second step, information gathering. And I can't tell you how critical. That might be the most important step, because you're really finding out what's important to the client and the biggest reason why you're there. So let's jump into the third one, case design. This is where you go back to the office. If you need some assistance, maybe you'll contact Amy or myself or someone else at DMI to get help. You would review the client situation and then start to come up with a solution to whatever their challenge or pain is. It could be a nice quick solution. Maybe we need to run a term quote or get you a MIGA rate or something like that. Or it could possibly be really in-depth. Maybe we have to do full-blown comprehensive retirement income planning. Everyone is different. But I would highly suggest, if you need any assistance, to contact DMI. We can help you. That's one of the things we specialize in. Help you with case design, figuring out how do we come up with a solution to the client's challenge. Once we come up with a solution to it, obviously, before you go out or contact the client again, you're going to review that pain. We're going to go over a solution. And then we're also going to talk about how to close. Make sure, finally, that you bring out what you need to bring to the next meeting with the client. The last thing you want to do is go see the client. You tell them what the solution is to their challenge, and they say, okay, let's move forward. And you don't have any applications or anything with you. I can't tell you how many times advisors have told me that. They said, well, I forgot to bring an application for this or that. Don't be that person. Make sure, whether it's you leave it in your vehicle or you have it with you, that you have all the paperwork that's needed. Obviously, if you're doing this virtually, it's a totally different story. But make sure you're prepared when you go out to see the client, because you never know. Client may just say, let's do it, let's move forward. Closing. There's a lot of different ways to close. And I can't tell you that one way is better than the other. You just got to figure out what works for you. Now you go out to Mr. or Mrs. Client. Let's use that example again. We're going to use the alternative approach. I know, Mr. or Mrs. Client, you're very concerned about running out of money. Would you like to go this solution, or would you like to go that solution? Either is fine. It's whatever you're most comfortable with. That way you're sort of taking no off the table and they're choosing between the two. You can use the negative question approach. Mr. or Mrs. Client, can you think of any reason why the solution I gave you would not work for you right now? Curing the ailment approach. Mr. or Mrs. Client, you talked about running out of money. You talked about here's what your pain is, your challenge is. So what I did is I went back to the office, came up with a solution to that. And that's what we're talking about today. I've showed you a solution to what your ailment or your pain is. And there are many other ways to close people. Again, I'm not saying one way is better than the other. It's all I would say is do what works best for you, and absolutely do not waffle. Go in there assuming that they're going to accept whatever you show them as a solution. Bottom line, be confident. And the final, let's say you closed them, you took the application, everything's hunky-dory. Step 5, follow-up. This is also a critical step that so many advisors just pass up on, and they're really missing the boat here. First part of it, when is it best to follow up? I like the assertion, sort of like ABC, always be closing. Once you take that application, you should always be following up in one form or another, whether it's the day of the application or later on. Remember, the goal is moving forward. They're now clients of yours. You want them to look at you as a resource. So in their mind, if something comes up in the future, whether it's a week or a month or a year down the road, something from a financial or insurance standpoint, they're going to think of you. That's when you become a resource. Obviously, referrals is our lifeblood in the industry. So your goal is become that resource. So when you follow up with them, they're going to be happy to give you referrals, regardless of whether you ask for them or not. And then cross-sell. Things may change. You know, someone may pass away. Someone may lose a job in this day and age. So that's why follow-up is so critical, because you never know when things are going to change, and you have that cross-sell ability. How do you follow up? Obviously, a lot of different ways. You know, phone call, email, snail mail is great. You know why it's great? Because no one is doing it anymore. A lot of people have newsletters nowadays. That's great. You know, even in person, you know, show up to a client's home, have a mask on for the next few months, hopefully, and just have a conversation on the front step. Bring your own chair. You know, maybe sit in their backyard and have a conversation. Be creative. That's the key. The more you think out of the box and the more different you are, the better it's going to be for your business model. And I have a lot of advisors who ask me, how often should I follow up with them? Well, it really depends on the client. I would say at minimum once a month, and that once a month doesn't necessarily have to be a phone call. It could be an email, or it could be if you've set up a newsletter. Maybe they're receiving a monthly newsletter. Maybe it's a combination of everything. They get a newsletter once a quarter. You send them an email once a month, and maybe you call them once every 6 weeks or something. Again, follow-up is one of the most important parts of the steps of client acquisition. So we've gone over a lot in the past almost 20 minutes now. So what I want to do is, in conclusion, just go through them and just let you know that these steps, they're not linear. It's not going to be every single client is going to be step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. A lot of times, maybe if you didn't do a good enough job at information gathering, step 2, when you're closing, they don't take, and you got to go all the way back to information gathering. It's it's not going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 every single time. So you just have to be aware of that. But with that said, 99% of the clients that you bring on are going to go through that process. It may not be exactly maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 4, 5, and then, close it that way. But just remember that if you use this process with most of the clients, it's going to work that way. Make sure you leverage DMI. Like I said, we're great for helping you with case design, but from a prospecting standpoint, we do have a lot of initiatives that we're going to talk more about next week during the sales training meeting that is entitled Prospecting During This Pandemic. If you want to talk about information gathering, what types of questions you have, we can help you with any of these steps of client acquisition. That's what we're here for. And the last two, I think, are so important. Be creative and have fun with it. I mean, we got in the industry, why? Not necessarily to make money. Well, some people, but it's to help people. And if you can help people and enjoy doing it, it's just a win-win situation for everyone. So my goal today was just go through a little bit of sales training. Maybe, like I said earlier, might be something that you didn't think of before. You might have learned one thing. If you did learn one thing, then I think this time that we spent together is well worth it. But at this point, Amy, let me ask you this. Did I do such a fantastic job that there are no questions, or do we have any questions out there at this point?
I don't see any questions yet, but if you guys have questions, please feel free to go ahead and type in the chat box because we're more than happy to answer them.